Hello, you guys. Welcome back to the channel. Happy Self-Mastery Monday. We're going to be going over two major stories. I know there's a lot of catch up to do from this past weekend between sports, with Knicks, World Cups, with Iran deals, with controversies around TPUSA, with, Anthropic deals closing, like just so much stuff going on. But I wanted to talk to you guys specifically about two things that stood out to me because I think there's good, valuable lessons that we can dive into for both. So first one, we have what could be a major turning point in the Middle East of a developing peace agreement between the United States and Iran that could end possibly a 100-day conflict, reopening the Strait of Hormuz, and potentially bringing back the global market and global stability. On the other story, we're going to be looking at the controversy that has been making waves online involving Candace Owens and Coleman, who most recently shared their perspectives on a private conversation that happened with Erika Kirk and Tucker Carlson, and basically all the questions surrounding the public statements, the private conversation, and whether people are truly who they present themselves to be. Now, while these stories may seem unrelated, I actually think they share a common thread: decision making. How leaders make decisions when the stakes are high, how we evaluate people we trust, and how we should protect ourselves from making emotional decisions that can carry consequences for years on end. Today, we're going to be breaking down both stories, separating the facts from the emotions, the facts from the opinions, as we always do, and we try our best, provide as much context as possible, and then discuss what the lessons and the takeaways can be from all this. Not just the political ones, but the personal lessons. So without further ado, before we get into today's topic, do remember to subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications, do like the video, and do comment below. Are you guys highly optimistic for this Iran peace deal? I know I am, because I'm tired of war, one, and I want global stability and prosperity. So comment below your thoughts on it. I would love to hear it, but without further ado, let's get into today's topic. Okay, you guys. So we're going to start off with the possible peace deal. And the reason I have quotations going on is because it's not actually a peace deal just yet. Right now, it's something called a memorandum. Well, essentially, I'm going to put it right here so you guys can see what I'm reading. But the U.S. and Iran reached an initial deal to end the 100-day war and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The United States and Iran announced an initial agreement Monday to halt the war. Halt the war. I just wanted to emphasize that began in late February 2026, extended a ceasefire, and lift the U.S. naval blockade on the Iranian ports. The deal includes a 60-day window for talks on Iran's nuclear program, sanction relief, regional stability, with a formal signing planned on Friday in Geneva, mediated by Pakistan and Qatar. Iran agrees to low-level uranium enrichment for civilian use with verifiable inspections, potentially unlocking phased relief of oil sales and a $24 billion in frozen assets. While U.S. officials highlight destroyed Iran military capabilities as leverage for compliance. Now, wherever you stand on Iran, wherever you stand on the war, I'm hoping collectively, before we get into the actual deal, right? I'm hoping that we can collectively just say, we're happy this is coming to a close. Now, whether this will stay that way is a whole nother different story. But I know you guys love visuals, and I wanted to basically play a perspective on an expert himself on what his view is. But let's listen to what he says. This is specifically coming from Fox News. They're hosting an expert in this space, and I think he's like completely unbiased from this. But I also think that he's very realistic, and he's not kind of like letting his own political views kind of like sway this. I think he's just looking at this as objectively as he can, as if he was back in his active position as a consultant or leading negotiator when it comes to these kind of logistical operations. So without further ado, let's listen in.
I'm joined by security expert Hal Kempfer tonight to discuss the potential peace deal. Hal, tell me what you're thinking tonight.
Well, Brian, they've got a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, which is not a memorandum of agreement. It's not a full agreement. It's not a peace treaty. And I say that because some of these terms have been kind of intermingled in some of the discourse going on. But it does establish a roadmap for the next 60 days for negotiations. There are some big things that are being brought up in this. Of course, the first thing right off is they want to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. That is strangling global supply chain for oil, gas, but also things like fertilizer and some other petrochemical related items that come out of the Persian Gulf. So that's going to be first and foremost to get that going. But then there's some other things that are being talked about, such as, halting Iran's support of proxy terrorist networks around the region. That's going to be a very difficult one to work out. Getting all the enriched uranium and all the nuclear material, all the nuclear infrastructure out of Iran. That's going to be a big negotiation item, and that is not a small thing. I used to be the director of intelligence of a multinational task force in the Middle East that worked on weapons of mass destruction issues. So I can tell you that is a very logistics heavy sort of thing that they're talking about. That's all got to be worked out. And then, of course, basically the other side is gradually releasing some of those sanction funds, the U.S. eventually lifting the naval blockade, and also sanctions on oil, which might bring Iran into the global economy in ways that it hasn't been in decades.
Okay, let's pause there before they get into the rest of the interview. It's pretty short, so we're not going to be honing in, beating a dead horse with this one. But one thing that I wanted to kind of highlight is because a lot of the, commentary and reporting on social media itself is kind of framing that the U.S. is going to be paying Iran $30 billion, here it says $24 billion. When I hear that, freezing of assets or sanction relief, basically, I just want to break this down so it's clear to people, because I was confused on this myself. Are we paying them? I get it. I get there's a lot of questions surrounding that or misinformation out there. So just to make it down, sanction relief doesn't automatically mean the U.S. writes a check to Iran. Because as a taxpayer, I know that I had concerns. I know a lot of people do have concerns. But essentially it means, one, unfreezing Iran's assets, which means Iran has $1 billion that belong to Iran, and they were frozen in foreign banks because of the sanctions. Sanction relief can now allow Iran to access some of that money. And I'm assuming that's going to be given to them gradually as, they come closer and closer to an actual agreement. Secondly, they're going to be allowing Iran to sell oil. So the U.S. can waive or ease restrictions that prevent countries from buying oil from Iran, and then that allows Iran to gain revenue based off of oil exports. And then last but not least, allowing banking and trade. So Iran may gain greater access to international banking systems and global trade, making it easier to move money and conduct business. So for the people out there that's saying we're writing a check and thinking that is coming from us, no. Because I was genuinely concerned about that. I'm am I reading this right? Am I understanding this right? And I think it's important that we all do our basic research to understand what's going on, what is and what isn't. However, it's also important to state that the Vice President, J.D. Vance himself, stated that no funds are being transferred to Iran simply for signing the agreement. The broader sanction relief would be tied to future compliance and verification steps. Now, pretty much summarizing in more professional political terms of what was just being said. Because I don't want people to freak out thinking I'm paying, not only was my taxes going to the war, not only was my taxes going to do something I didn't want to do, now I got to pay for this. Essentially, no. So obviously the future will reveal what that looks like and so on and so forth. We've been told so many things, but at least initially right now, that is the basic understanding that I want you guys to understand. Now, moving on to the rest of this, because I don't want to beat on a dead horse, but I do want to go over some critical things that are pretty important that we should be highlighting when it comes to this deal. And then I'll give away my general takeaways once we review this. So without further ado, let's continue.
How do you know these deadlines seem like they might be shifting? Sounds like we're hearing about something being official tomorrow, but Iran maybe waiting to the end of the week. Can you clear that up?
Well, there might be something that gets started tomorrow. I'm not quite clear what that is. Maybe they'll start opening the Strait of Hormuz tomorrow. There's some work to be done there. Obviously, if there's any mining, they need to start demining immediately. I'm not quite sure how much sea mining Iran actually did, though. I think there's been a lot more said than there is underwater. There's been quite a bit of movement of ships going through the Strait of Hormuz, a lot more. You know, the president just announced that we had a program getting ships through, and I haven't heard of any of those ships getting hit by mines, which tells me that maybe there isn't that extensive sea mining that we anticipated that Iran could or did, but what they could have done in there. So that may be something that we can move through quickly. That may happen, but they're talking about doing some sort of signing ceremony over in Switzerland on Friday. Not sure if President Trump's going to show up for that. There was talk earlier of Vice President Vance showing up for a signing. And then the question is, who will the Iranians send? I'm not sure. It'd have to be someone. If you have the Vice President of the United States or the President there, you have to send someone fairly high up. I'm almost 100% sure it won't be somebody from the Revolutionary Guard Corps. Could be President Pezeshkian of Iran. He was rumored to have offered his resignation about a week or so ago because he said he couldn't perform his duties. Well, this would be a duty that he could perform, which is to go out there and be part of the signing ceremony. So we'll see. That's details to be worked out on that signing ceremony, but I'm sure it'll be a very well televised event. And this will follow on the back of the G7 conference, which is this week.
So before we get into the last little bit that they go over, just to summarize that up for people who may not be following, essentially this video was done yesterday when the initial announcement came out. So they're expecting to finalize the initial deal and hoping to have signage done on Friday. So they're still working out a lot of the details, but essentially there is something that is going to be in the work, and there's some kind of agreement that there's going to be some signing going on. Now, the signing is not the peace deal itself. It's like he said in the beginning, it's the initial memorandum for an actual agreement, giving them the space and the window to negotiate these bigger logistics, but can at least agree on basic things that obviously impact the globe, like the Strait of Hormuz and all the economic uncertainties that themselves, the U.S. and all countries are facing with this unfortunate event. And then the signing ceremony says Switzerland, the article I just sent you guys said Geneva, wherever the case may be, there's going to be some kind of signing happening on Friday. So we got to hold our breath to see if this is actually going to happen or if things are going to change. But let's finish the rest of this, and then I'll wrap up with my general thoughts.
Hal, correct me if I'm wrong, but without any kind of nuclear concessions, we're just going back to where we were before the war.
Well, that will be brought up many times, which is, okay, it's an MOU. It doesn't have them guaranteeing that they won't do stuff. Now, I think rhetorically, Iran will say we have no plans to pursue a nuclear weapon. And the president has said many times, he said it certainly in the last few days, that Iran has relinquished its desire to build a nuclear weapon. And I would point out that Iran rhetorically has always said that they will not build a nuclear weapon, and then covertly they're working on a program to build a nuclear weapon. So saying that and actually having in place something that prevents that from happening are two different things. And you can't take the regime at its word. That's always been the case. We used to say in the Cold War with the Soviets, trust but verify. With the Iranians, it's always been verify and verify, because they'll say stuff and then work 180 out from whatever they just said they're going to do. So the inspection program will be big. The oversight program on whatever they say they're going to do is going to be big. And then, of course, working out the logistics and everything else in terms of this will be at some point in time, somebody's boots are going to be on the ground in Iran at these locations where they have enriched uranium, or what the president sometimes calls nuclear dust, because those were bombed a year when we went in there with the Midnight Hammer strike. So somebody's going to have boots on the ground, whether it's U.S. or some other country, on our behalf, to go in there and get the stuff out, and then figure out what they're going to do with it, where will it go, how it will be handled. So a lot of details to be worked out in the next 60 days.
How about Israeli?
Yeah, I agree. So now, obviously, he's just kind of stating out the obvious there that, where U.S. says Iran can have a nuclear weapon. Iran says that they don't have one, they don't intend to have one. There's been a lot of controversy back and forth on what's true and what's not. Essentially, they're agreeing to have inspections done and then have whatever uranium that is not civilian used be moved out. So I think the things that kind of highlight to me is how is that inspection program actually going to go? Who's going to oversee it to verify that what we actually went to war for is going to actually be compliant? And then second thing is, what does boots on the ground actually look like? Because when people hear boots on the ground, they automatically think about some kind of force, violence, retaliation, war. And essentially, he's speaking logistically, it's going to take a lift for people to actually go and physically remove this stuff. It's not an easy task. It's not a one-day thing. So I'm skeptical just based off my speculative personality. I'm very, like I said, I'm very interested to know how those things would actually lay out and how we would not end up just in another war, or that this is just something for the headlines and something for people to grab hope on, or just to be a little bit relieved on as they try to work on negotiations in the background, or if this is actually even true. There's obviously miscommunication on both ends. I think that Iran is saying that, there is no peace agreement. U.S. is saying that there is. Obviously, there's been discussions happening, so what's true and what's not, we don't know. We can only go based off what's going to be shown in these next few days, next few weeks, next few months, essentially. But I think that it's fair to have these inspections and verify and trust and verify that they're going to hold up their end of the bargain. But I also think that it's important that we hold up our end of the bargain, and that the other players at hand, the other countries at hand that are directly involved with this, specifically Israel, is holding up their end of the bargain too, because all this will just go in shambles, which he's going to get into if that does not happen. So he's finishing up right now. We're going to close on with this because I think it's critically important, and then I'll just sum up pretty much what I think the major takeaways are and what I think people should be preparing for and how they should be thinking about this.
About Israeli continuing to strike Lebanon. What happens there?
Well, what I saw, and keep in mind this all rolling out this afternoon, is there's something supposed to be in there that, as you know, Iran and the government of Lebanon have a ceasefire in place. The U.S. negotiated that, but the government of Lebanon does not represent Hezbollah. And the government of Lebanon has actually been a little bit ticked at Iran because Iran says they represent Hezbollah, and Hezbollah operates on, obviously, it's a Lebanese extremist organization on Lebanese soil. However, what I'm hearing is that there's something in there that says that Israel and Lebanon will have a ceasefire. Now, there's been a lot of reports that the president has used some rather strong language with Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, to curtail his activities, particularly in retaliating towards Hezbollah strikes. But if this is part of the agreement, this puts the onus on Iran to curtail Hezbollah from doing stuff. And these Israeli strikes are always in response to something that Hezbollah did, usually firing missiles and drones into northern Israel. So Iran's feet need to be held to the fire if they're going to speak on behalf of Hezbollah to make sure that Hezbollah does not violate that ceasefire. And that's not an insignificant thing, because Hezbollah will, I'm not going to say almost assuredly, but they have a track record of basically ignoring ceasefire terms and doing stuff like that.
Hal, the way things are shaping up, who's going to be the winner here, if anyone at all?
I don't know who exactly is going to be. Obviously, the regime is still there. When this thing started, the hope was that this would be enough to topple the regime. Well, the regime's still in place. And obviously, there's a lot of Iranians that are very disappointed, particularly in the U.S., a lot of Iranian expats that are over here that are very disappointed to see the regime in place. However, who knows? Things could change, and you could see a political dynamic take place in there, and maybe stuff like we saw in January and December could take place. But obviously, the U.S., we're going to say that this is a great victory, that we have achieved our goals, that this is what we set out to do, that we have stopped a potential nuclear armed Iran from ever taking place. We will say that, but I think the proof is going to be in the pudding of what transpires, what actually occurs. and what physically occurs on the ground in Iran and in the water around Iran.
Okay, so that was a lot to say just in a nutshell, but addressing his first point, just to give my general comments before we get into what I think the big takeaways are. I personally think that when it comes to war, there are just losers because people lose lives, people lose money, people lose resources, people lose time. And essentially, when it comes to lives and time, you unfortunately can't get those things back. Whether you are a regime, whether you are a civilian, whether you are in the military, for either one of those countries, it's unfortunate that there's so many people that lost family members, that lost loved ones, and you can't. No amount of money can bring back anyone. So that's very unfortunate. So I personally think on the U.S. front, Israel front, and Iran, when it just comes to doing this war, there is no winners. But essentially, I think what he was trying to get at is the fact that initially there was talks about a regime change. There hasn't really been a regime change because the son of the Ayatollah is still there. Obviously, they're going to say that the U.S. probably got what they wanted with not having a nuclear program. But I think essentially if there wasn't a nuclear program there to begin with, which there's a lot of controversy around because they thought that they took it out last year, then turns out they're enriching or they had enrichment. There's some people who were part of the administration that said that there weren't. Some people who are currently a part of the administration that said that they were. People who are currently a part of said that they weren't. So it's a lot of misinformation, a lot of back and forth. We don't really know the truth or what's not. Essentially, I think the average person wished that there was a more diplomatic way to go about this to ensure the safety and economic certainty globally in general, but that just wasn't the case. So there's no point of going over, not gonna say no point of going over all the things that happened, but I think that I hope that this is a lesson learned for all leaders, whether in the Middle East or whether over here in the West, that war is not the answer, violence is not the answer, and ultimately we need to come to the table to have these conversations regardless. So we might as well just try to buckle up our pants and do the best that we can and try to negotiate them without getting into a huge war that takes the lives of so many people. And he also mentioned that the Iranian people are not happy. I don't know if that's true. I haven't been keeping up with that. I know essentially from the U.S. we were happy with this war. I think a lot of people globally have complained about the economic instability that this has caused. But I think there's a greater message there that there's a lot of people who lost their lives who will not be coming back, regardless of whatever religion or ideology they hold, Christian, Muslim, agnostic, whatever the case may be. There are people that lost family members, loved ones, and are not coming back because of this. So with that being said, like I said, I don't think there's any winners from this. But, to each its own. People are going to defend whatever belief that they have. That's just personally mine because I'm not a pro-war person. I think most things can be handled with a simple conversation, no matter how hard the conversation needs to be. Now, my biggest takeaways from what he said is, right now, honestly, I think he was trying to be very diplomatic and very careful about his words. But he's just saying, hey, we don't know if this is going to hold up. We don't know if Iran's going to hold up the end of the deal. We don't know if Israel's going to hold up the end of the deal. We don't even know how the U.S. is going to handle this if either one of them decides to go against whatever's agreed on. Now, there are valid points on both ends. I'm not going to sit here and be biased towards one or to another. I'm not an Israeli. I'm not an Iranian. I'm a U.S. citizen. I was, born here. And essentially, as just a regular person, I don't want people in the Middle East, in the West, in the East, in general, whether if it's Ukraine, whether if it's Iran, whether Russia, U.S., Israel in general, I don't want war because I don't think that it ultimately, like I said, there's no winners in that. Now, I hope that this just comes out to be a lesson learned from everyone. And hopefully these leaders do not let their ego, do not let their emotions, do not let their pride get in the way of the greater good, which is calming down, not having war, and finding a path forward that everyone around can thrive, that's reasonable and respectful to the people who actually live and have lived in these areas and in the U.S. And bring about certainty and a prosperous future. I think that's something that all countries, regardless of where you stand politically, should want. And you guys will see that I'm pretty I would like to say common sense neutral. I feel like certain things are just common sense, blatant common sense. I do think that a peace deal could have been done without all this nonsense, without all the wars. Some people are going to disagree with me. I understand. I get it. I'm respectful of your opinion. I just don't agree. And if you don't agree with mine, you could just be respectful to mine as well. But like I said, the key takeaways are, one, are people going to hold up to the things that they say on whichever front that you are in? Number two, what these actual inspections, what boots on the ground are actually going to look like? And then three, how quickly and how long is this peace agreement going to actually last? And when are we going to actually get a finalized peace agreement? When are we going to see global stability economically? And when we're going to see also global prosperity? I think that's what concerns the average person, the average Iranian, the average American, the average Israeli. I think in general, people that just don't want war, just didn't want any of this to happen, and that have lost the lives of family members, I think that's just what their main concern is going to be about. That this doesn't happen again, that we keep the peace, and that we're able to thrive globally, economically, in general. And hopefully, just a better way of life moving forward, because I know a lot of people have been impacted by this. So essentially, we'll see what happens. If this is going to hold up until the end of the week, we'll see. Because we know that we've been going round and round in circles, months and months on end, saying that there's a peace agreement there, and then something happens that either prevents the peace agreement from happening, or it was just never happening to begin with. So hopefully we'll see how things unfold. I'll keep somewhat of a close eye on this. If they go back and forth saying that, oh, this is going to be extended or delayed, we pretty much know what's going to happen there. But what I want you guys to take away from this, as if there's a true ceasefire, if the Strait of Hormuz is opening, hopefully we start seeing global relief with gas prices, with groceries, as he said, with fertilization, and just in general with all the things that the Strait of Hormuz being closed have impacted. And hopefully we see it like as quickly as possible, right? Because I know a lot of people have been impacted financially. And what I would say, now is not the time when those reliefs come, when we see those prices come down. It's not the time to be spending all willy-nilly now that the summer is coming up, the 250-year anniversary is coming up. You probably have a lot of good summer plans coming up now that the kids are not in school. I get that. I still think it's important to live life and have a balance. But I also think with the uncertainty of not knowing if this is going to hold or not, it's important to plan for that. And even if it does hold, it's still important to plan for your future and sharpen yourself in whichever way you can, whether if it's with your skills, whether if it's financially, whether if it's with your family. It's important to prepare for whatever is to come. So my suggestions are doing these three options once you actually have some economic relief when the prices go down. One, I would highly encourage people to have an emergency fund, because we've seen how credit card spending went up. We've seen how job loss has been impacted. We've seen how groceries became unaffordable, gas prices became unaffordable, just so many different things. And I think it's important because we've seen how bad it gotten, but we obviously know it can go way worse. So we don't know if it is or if it's not. So I think it's important to plan for that. So I would strongly advise, if you don't have an emergency fund already, to contribute to your emergency fund. The second thing I would advise is to make sure that you have a recession-proof skill. So whether if it's investing in yourself in some kind of way, I think it's important. The number one thing that I am encouraging people to do, not just because of ongoing wars, back and forth peace deals that just don't pan out, I'm encouraging people to know more about home economics, whether if it's gardening, whether if it's cooking, whether if it's basic budgeting, whether if it's basic repairs. Those basic life skills are important because you never know, whether if it's with AI, in general, you never know what's going to happen in the world. And as long as you're able to garden, you're able to cook, you're able to repair, you're able to build, and you have a little bit of money stashed away, I think you'll be okay. And obviously having the protections that you feel like you need around your house, whether if it's with surveillance or the right to bear arms. So yeah, that would be my general advice to people, is just to not let the bounce back in the economy cause you to spend more. I think it's important for you to still plan. And even if things do hold up, invest in yourself and invest in your family, and be very intentional about what you put your money, this extra money that may be coming in extra money that may be coming in. 2, don't put it on nonsensical things that are not going to yield you any benefit. Invest it into things that are going to help you long-term and stabilize you long-term. An emergency fund, when it comes to issues like this, when it comes to world events that can cause uncertainty, it's important to just have something in the bank, right? But that's just my general thoughts. Now, let's move on to another very critical, important topic, which is basically Candace Owens came with a bombshell. And I'm going to say allegedly here too, right? Allegedly for the things that I have said, allegedly for the things that I am going to say. We're just reporting on the things that are being put out there, right? Now, Candace Owens came up with a bombshell, kind of highlighting something that could be really, really critically important when it comes to the Charlie Kirk case and what may have influenced his untimely death. Now, I'm going to let you hear it from Candace herself. Baron Coleman does a really good job with kind of like bringing in the relevancy to this. So we're gonna play it on what his overview on what she said on his podcast, and then we're gonna transition to her actual comments towards the end of what she revealed. So I know that was a little bit weird, but stay with me. Let's listen in on this really quickly, and then I'll give you guys my general thoughts as we go along. So let us get into this.
I'm gonna play a piece of what she said because I think it has uncovered something in this investigation that has been lying dormant this entire time, and that had we known this from the beginning, I'm not saying it would have changed the course of the investigation, but I think it would have illuminated it from a different angle. So let me play this real quick, and then I want to talk about it because I hope she adds a little more color and clarity as we go forward over the next few days, few weeks, few months. But I want you to listen to what she says right here. To me, it is the single most consequential thing that has happened in the TPUSA investigation in 9 months and 4 days.
July 20th-ish, Charlie vacationed in Maine for a couple of weeks. Okay, so let's just say from July 20th to July 30th, he went off radar. And this is when Mikey McCoy and Elizabeth McCoy joined them for the first time on vacation. And they capture all these images that we're then going to see as soon as Charlie's assassinated, these images of him walking with Erika, just kind of, oh, this is a happy couple. And then right after, in the midst of this, the same 2 weeks, Y-Refi comes in as the #1 sponsor for Charlie Kirk's fall tour. This is a total Israel-coded company. It was weird because they had already signed a contract from January through December for all their events, but now they doubled down. What catalyzed that sudden addendum to their contract? Yes, we want more. We're going to come in for this speaking tour that you're now going to do. And the first one's going to be at UVU, and me, the CEO, is going to travel with you at this event. Okay, that seems a bit weird. And then it dawned on me, I totally forgot something. Okay. And I'm just going to have to ask Tucker for forgiveness for.
I'm serious. I needed to play the background to get into what she's about to say, because you have to understand this takes place in the context of a vacation that Charlie and Erika took to Maine, or to wherever Tucker was at the time. I think Maine. Took to Maine to be with Tucker. And then Candace comes in over the top and does a podcast with Tucker. And Tucker and Candace have a side conversation in the context of that podcast, either before or after the podcast. And that, what she's about to discuss, I think, is the single most consequential thing that's happened in this investigation. And I don't even know that, I'm sure she does. She's very brilliant. But she didn't say it on the show Friday. I don't think she conveyed Friday just how important this was.
Yeah, I agree with what Baron is going to say, and then we're going to get into specifically why this is so important. And it's specifically, I'm going to bring about to you guys the lessons I think you should be taking from this, whether if it's true or not, because it's something that we see kind of time and time again, people fall victim to when it comes to people that they decide to be in relationships with. So I know that left kind of an open-ended question and probably raise more questions than answers. But again, we're just trying to lay out the foundation here and give you guys full context before reeling it back in as to why this is important and how this can affect the average person. So let's continue.
Sharing this because I knew that there was something bothering me about this Maine vacation. I had a baby, and I think I blacked out after Charlie's assassination and didn't remember that I went up to Maine too. I went up to Maine with my husband in July. Okay. My son was born on May 1st. We were off air. And then the first thing I did was I went with my newborn Roman and my husband up to Maine to do Tucker's show. And I did an interview and I genuinely forgot about this. Like I genuinely forgot about this. And we went in on the topic of Israel. I'm just going to show you a little 10-second clip here so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about.
Since the 80s, Jeffrey Epstein has been working for Israel. I don't know how I know that, and Trump and Pam Bondi don't, but they got to bring me in. Like I might have some evidence here, right? It's like,
Okay, so he's gonna skip forward, and then we're gonna skip forward. We're gonna jump ahead a little bit as well as he does, to just give like the general context of like what we're actually trying to get at, what they're actually trying to get at. Excuse me, with showing this and bringing this to the to people's forefront. Before we continue, I want to be very clear. I'm not for one side or another because I've never really watched TPUSA. But I think there's a lot of valuable lessons that people can personally take away from this since they're keeping up with the story when it comes to their actual decision makings just in general, but also when it comes to selecting a partner, but also when it comes to the very important questions on what values you have and what rock you're willing to die on, and if the person that you're selecting is going to be by your side through it all. And I think that you can take that either way that it goes, whether you're pro TPUSA, pro Erika or not. I just happen to think that this one specifically, this specific lesson, time and time again, I see people and I've talked to people who fall victim to this. So let's continue.
I'm going to skip forward to this part because it's interesting, but it's not entirely critical to the story she's about to tell here. So let me just.
Yeah. And before he actually continues, I think it's this is my speculative personality, right? This is not me accusing anything of anyone. This is a general observation. I find it very coincidental that they were all in Maine in the summer around July. Give that what you will. I don't know what to make of that, right? I'm not saying that there's anything there. I just find it very, very interesting and coincidental. Maybe that was fate from God. Maybe that was something that was intentionally planned on Carlson's end. I don't know. Maybe it was just how the schedule kind of like laid out. But I think I don't think it's like something that should be hyper focused on, but maybe just like pin it somewhere. Maybe pin it somewhere. Come back to it maybe another time. Maybe have some kind of relevance and give more details as to like how this actually impacted Charlie, which they are going to get into, but specifically having all of them there in Maine, Candace, other people from Charlie's camp, Charlie, Tucker. I think Tucker lives in Maine, so whatever. I don't know. Maybe there was someone behind the scenes that knew this was all going to happen, knew that Candace was going to be there. And I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities. We're not going to deep dive into it because I don't want to harper on something that may be completely irrelevant. But it's just interesting to me. But let's continue.
I promise you, I forgot that. I forgot that I had this. I forgot that I went up to Maine until I was looking at this Erika speech. And I was like, I know what is bothering me about this speech. What's bothering me about this speech is that when I got off air with Tucker, obviously you just have chatter, like just chatter in the air, like about everything you just discussed and what's happening and everything we said there. We're talking about Epstein. And Tucker said to me, and I'm obviously, I'm not going to get this verbatim, but he was like, yeah, he talked about a SAS speech and he just said they're like, taking money from Charlie because of this whole speech. And I was like, yeah, Charlie's kind of coming over to our side. He's really had an awakening about this. It's crazy that I forgot this, but it's the second part of what he said to me. He said, I just had dinner with him and Erika. They were just here. I think he said like last night. I kid you not. They were just there in Maine having dinner with Tucker. I remember this. I am 1000% certain. Days within me, it was like Charlie was there and then I was there. And he had dinner with Erika and he said something, which is the reason why I was happy when they announced that Erika was going to be CEO, because before we could have ever known that Charlie was going to be assassinated, as we were sitting here in Maine talking about Israel and Epstein and what the pressure that Charlie was under, Tucker was like, I absolutely love Erika. He said this publicly 1,000 times, so I'm not revealing anything here. And he was like, she is like hardcore on the anti-Israel train. And that she had gone in on dinner about everything. And that, this is who Erika was. And I was like, oh, wow. Like I actually never got to spend that kind of time with her. Like I know Charlie's coming to the other side, but I never really speak to Erika like that. And they had this dinner in the midst of all of this sass stuff. And I happened to be in Maine. And when I look at that and I plot that on the timeline.
We're going to pause right there because as we know right now, based off what's going on, Erika is indeed pro-Israel. So that's very interesting. And they're going to get into specifically their thoughts and opinions as to how they feel about this and so on and so forth. And I'm just going to say, like, buckle up because they're very unfiltered here. But I'm going to let Candace give her general opinion because I think that, like, obviously she brought this up. I think it's one opinion. And I think Barron gives an alternative opinion. And he actually lays down a few options of what this could possibly be and which one he's going to go with. But essentially, before we get into the options, why are they trying to even, like, bring this to light? If this is true, this can raise questions as to more questions than it already has as to Erika Kirk's legitimacy to take over Turning Point USA, and if there wasn't some kind of, let's just say, incentive for her to push Charlie down one road or another in specific timelines on specific days. Specific years, Baron Coleman does a very, very good job with breaking all this down. So I would highly suggest to go see the live session that he did yesterday. It's called Lessons Learned While I Was in Phoenix This Weekend, episode 127 on the Baron Coleman podcast. Definitely do go check it out. I'm not going to ramble onto everything specifically that he highlighted, but I think overall he did a good job with, like, laying the foundation as to, like, why he came up with the conclusions that he did regarding the options that he's going to lay forth. But before we get into his general options, let's move on to Candace's thoughts and opinions when it comes to this specifically.
We were sitting here in Maine talking about Israel and Epstein and what the pressure that Charlie was under. Tucker was like, I absolutely love Erika. He said this publicly 1,000 times, so I'm not revealing anything here. And he was like, she is, like, hardcore on the anti-Israel train. And that she had gone in on dinner about everything, and that, you know, this is who Erika was. And I was like, oh wow, like, I actually never got to spend that kind of time with her. Like, I know Charlie's coming to the other side, but I never really speak to Erika like that. And they had this dinner in the midst of all of this sass stuff, and I happened to be in Maine. And when I look at that and I plot that on the timeline, it convinces me that Erika is a psychopath. Genuinely convinces me that Erika's a psychopath because, and please, Tucker, forgive me, I had to share that. I know you like her. I know you're a fan of Erika. I know we have different opinions and different perspectives, but this doesn't make sense. This does not make sense that Erika gets on stage and is pro-Israel, blinks and is at dinner and is anti-Israel, more anti-Israel than Tucker. I mean, than Charlie, as we're talking about all this Epstein stuff and Charlie's under pressure. And then as soon as Charlie passes away, she's up on stage with Barry Weiss saying anybody that doesn't support Israel has brain rot. That's a psychopath. That is somebody who can be someone else in every room. And we have told this story over and over again about Erika. She literally just commutes her entire personality depending on who she's in front of. Like, there is no personality. It's who is the audience. I'm a Catholic if I'm in the back of a church and I'm with this donor who's got a lot of money and Stacy taps on their shoulder and I share how Charlie was about to become Catholic, and then the woman, as I shared with you guys, gets on a plane, brings back a relic of Saint Michael because Erika's so hardcore Catholic, and then she blinks and she instructs Andrew Colvetz to deny what I said about Charlie in the Catholic Church. Like, literally the next week, she okays Alex Clark coming out and saying I'm a liar. Erika's a psychopath. This is like, it just dawned on me. She was playing this game while Charlie was alive.
Okay, guys, that was just a lot. That was a lot. And obviously Candace is very passionate about this, as she said she lost her friend. I get it. And to be fair, I understand a little bit of both perspectives. Obviously, I think Candace and the team that is trying to figure out what happened to Charlie Kirk, how and why, are more credible, more reasonable, more thought-provoking, because they are going after just regular common sense questions that people of, like, normal backgrounds would ask. But that's not what I'm trying to get at. What I'm trying to get at is her last point about playing a part. And this is why I wanted to bring this to you guys specifically, because I think we've all been victim in some way, shape, or form of thinking that we know someone, thinking that this person is showing us who they really are, but we're being deceived and we don't even know it. I've been victim of that before. I'm sure a lot of people have been victim of that. And this is not me saying like, oh, you know, like we're like, you know, you like in the beginning stages of relationship, like everything's sunshines and rainbows, and then as you guys get to know each other and understand certain things, there's like banter and maybe some arguments and disagreements. I'm not saying that specifically, but let's just be honest, because I personally know people who portray themselves to be one way, who portray themselves to have, let's just say, a certain forefront when it comes to certain people. With this group of people, they're this way. With this group of people, they're that way. And specifically what she's saying is she's playing a part for Charlie while he was alive, or based off of how he was navigating his own beliefs as things are developing in real time. And I think those people could be very dangerous because you don't know where they stand and their values fluctuate based off of what benefits them. And some people are going to be like, well, that's like, you know, like you can't fault people. That's survival, that they're trying to get theirs, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry. I don't operate on that demographic because I feel like, and this is not me saying that what Candace is saying is set in stone. This is me using what she's saying as an example that I'm trying to relate to you guys. I can't tell you the amount of people, men or women, but since we're talking about Charlie here, we'll put this in the context of men. This is not me bashing women. I'm saying this for either one, but I'm just giving you a general example because I don't think it's more commonly known, but I'm just, because we're speaking about Charlie, he's a guy, I'll give an example to both, to be fair. I can't tell you the amount of conversations that I've had with men that went through divorces, that went through relationships, and when the woman got what she wanted, there was like a whole 360 when it came to the marriage. When she felt like she had a hold on him and he can't leave, or something within that matter, that her true colors started to come out. And I think that I've seen women who've had relationships with guys, and in the beginning he's one way. He's like Prince Charming. He's like everything that you would ever want in a guy. And then give it some time, and for some reason, as he kind of like wears you down or gives you false hope. I don't know. I've been victim of that myself. But you know, they just do a whole 360. And I think for either gender, we've all experienced that. And I think it's important that we let those experiences teach us and not fall victim over and over again to that possibility of being basically bamboozled at its finest. And oh my gosh, I would love to share with you guys my personal experience, but I'm not gonna do that because I don't really go that personal, but also like I'm not one to like, you know, let certain experiences that I have, because they can come off as bashing someone. I think that's just something that me and God just got going on, right? But essentially, people have always experienced this kind of dynamic. And I don't want you guys and I'm not saying it needs to be the extreme. I'm not saying this is definitively of Erika and Charlie. I'm just alleging here, taking the communication and taking the lessons out of what Candace is saying, because I don't want anyone to come after me just because I'm giving my general opinion on something that everyone has experienced. If this is true and this is real, obviously Charlie Kirk's situation is the utmost extreme. He lost his life, and obviously with that, losing everything that was connected to him. To the lesser extreme, like dialing it down several notches, people have lost their marriages, people have lost their money, people have lost the things that they worked for in years, people have lost hope, people have lost their humanity, some people have committed suicide, some people, you know, just don't deal with this very well. And reasonably so. When you're intentionally trying to live your life with someone, thinking you're going to have a happily ever after, and this person is like playing you for a fool, I think anyone in their rightful state of mind would just not sit well with. And I want to give you guys some just like general like important tips on this, and then like just 2 quick tips. One, you need to make sure that you're not letting your emotions cloud your judgment when it comes to someone that you want to build a relationship with. And I know it's hard because sometimes you end up falling for the person, sometimes you end up liking the person, sometimes you don't realize these things until a little bit too late. But it's important to ask the proper questions and to test these things over and over and over and over again. I think sometimes because we're so caught up in the moment with someone that we don't ask proper questions, or when we have certain signs that kind of reflect that this person is maybe not the best match for us. I'm not saying that they're a bad person. I'm just saying that they may not be a good match. We tend to overlook things or tend to think that we can live with these things, and then not knowing that they can bring great consequences to us later. The second thing I would say is to make sure that you test what the person is saying is true. And there's different ways to test it. You can ask someone over and over and over and over and over again certain things. But honestly, sometimes people genuinely believe whatever they put in their head, or they genuinely just know how to respond to certain things based off like just, oh, this wouldn't be appropriate to say out loud, or I know this person views things this way. I think that we're all intelligent in our own way. We know how to answer things appropriately. But when it comes to actually being in the heat of the moment, when things are actually there to lay out, you see the truth with someone. And listen, I'm not saying that I've been a perfect person. I haven't made mistakes. I've made mistakes. But when you have constant tests to show you how this person operates in this specific situation, that will give you a better indication whether word to mouth, how someone particularly may answer a question. So I think it's important. And I think, unfortunately, you're going to have to figure out, because some people could play their part, man. Some people could play their part to no end. They can sit there and say anything you want to say, act how you want them to act, because you're directly benefiting them. But take away the benefits, you'll see those true colors come out pretty quickly. Very, very quickly. And I would just warn people essentially to that. But bringing it back, because I know you guys are kind of like on a cliff as to like, okay, we understand that, we get that, but how is this connecting to the actual death of Charlie Kirk? Baron Coleman does a good job with laying out some options as to what the possible incentives could have been, specifically towards how this information about Erika could be relevant towards his death. So let's continue. This one's going to be a little bit long, so bear with me, guys. I'm going to try to break this up because he kind of like obviously does a really good job with breaking down the options. I want you guys to hear it in its entirety. So let's listen in.
But when I was finally able to get a little downtime on Saturday, kicked my feet up in the hotel room, and I thought, I got to watch The Principal. She did a show Friday, and I was not around for it. So let me turn on the replay. I go to Spotify. I fire up the replay like a good humble host would. I'm watching it sitting there, and I'm thinking, oh, no. Oh, no. There's only 2 options here. One is Candace is mistaken or not telling the truth, but I don't believe that. So it's fine. Could she be mistaken? Could Tucker not have said those things? Could Tucker have said something else and she misheard him? Or 2, Tucker was telling the truth. She accurately heard what Tucker said, and she accurately conveyed to us, which I do believe, that Erika sat down at dinner with Tucker Carlson the month and a half before Charlie died, and was rabidly anti-Israel. The consequences of that being accurate cannot be understated, which is why I was shocked when I opened up X for the first time in several days and did not see this story plastered everywhere.
Now, he's going to get into why he was shocked, which he's going to literally tie in everything, key components that you guys should take away when it comes to the case regarding Charlie Kirk, and why I guess people are ultimately going after Erika's neck. Now, whether if it's right or wrong is its own thing, but we're just reporting on what's going on, so let's continue.
Because it is wholly inconsistent with every sentence about Israel Erika has ever uttered publicly or posted on social media. And to believe that she is behind the scenes with Charlie at dinner with Tucker, pushing a rabid anti-Israel message raises only a few possibilities. One is she's a liar. I mean, admittedly, she is. I mean, we've caught her in many lies. We documented them here. I'd be happy to share that with anybody. Happy to make the correction on any of them that allegedly, in my opinion, but happy to make the correction anytime anybody presents evidence she was not lying or I'm mistaken. I'll be the first to correct it.
I respect that too. I respect that so much because there's not a lot of people. I feel like there's a lot of people who just like been going off the mouth, like super crazy on TPUSA, super crazy on Erika. And don't, whether certain information came up that contradicts certain things, whether there's certain initial information that, you know, people don't want to touch or look into. I think this is why I like Baron Coleman. He does a really good job with correcting the narrative right away, but and then also holding himself accountable to something that may or may not have been true. Now, it hasn't happened often at all. Like, I think it just happened like once or twice, maybe at most. I think specifically when he was reviewing some of the court documents, I think there was just one thing. I forgot exactly what it was, but I think that's the only thing. But he quickly corrected the narrative, and I respect that because there's not a lot of podcasters that will keep that level of integrity. And I think in general, whether you're podcasting or in general, having integrity is important. And obviously, he has his reasons. He was, you know, supportive of Erika and transitioned into questioning whether or not, you know, she had some involvement or some knowledge, or whether she was rightfully the person to take over TPUSA. His views has changed from being pro Erika to that, and he has his reasons. He displays all his reasons. Whether you agree with him or not is one thing, but let's continue on the options. Option one, obviously, he just said she's possibly lying. What are the other couple options? Let's listen in.
But I've caught her in a lot of what I believe are lies. So it's possible she was lying. She sat down with Tucker. She gave this rabid anti-Israel speech because that's just what Tucker wanted to hear. And she thought Tucker was anti-Israel or anti-Netanyahu or anti-Likud party, whatever. And so she just fed into that. That's possible. She's just a dishonest person. That's option A. Option B is she genuinely felt that way for a very short period of time in mid-July. Like her entire social media and public speaking history prior to that, she was very pro-Israel. And then there was like a 2-week period in the middle of July where she was rabidly anti-Israel. And then after Charlie passed, for whatever reason, she becomes rabidly pro-Israel. So that's option B. Option C, a little weird also. She was rabidly pro-Israel. She turned right before Charlie died, maybe because of the stuff he was going through. She was rabidly anti-Israel. A position she still holds to this day, but she's lying now saying she's pro-Israel because she's scared or she just wants to get along or she thinks that's the path to success. That's kind of a dark answer because that means now she's living out a dishonest lie. She's privately anti-Israel as she was talking to Tucker that day in July, but she's lying to us and acting pro-Israel because she's scared or that's option C.
Okay, before he gets into the last option, let's review the options. She's a liar. She's a switcheroo based off from her public view, and she was playing a part. Or then option C was essentially she's lying and she's technically anti-Israel, but she's promoting because her husband was just shot cold and dead. Obviously, none of these make her look good. Not option A, not option B, not option C, and he's about to get into option D. None of them make her look good. To me, though, if she was scared, because let's just be fair, her husband was shot publicly in cold blood, there were probably some threats that were said. We can't expect everyone to be a hero like Charlie Kirk. And she's probably worried about her children, herself, whatever the case may be. Not saying it's right or wrong. I don't know. I don't really have much of an opinion on this. I can understand them all. And I think they're all rational options that Baron Coleman have laid out. If she's scared, I think she would have done herself a greater deal with coming out in public and saying what's real and hiding out in public, right? Especially given how much eyes are on the Kirk family because of Charlie Kirk's death. I could be wrong. Let's get into option 4, and then we'll break down the rest, and then we'll just do some closing remarks from Baron, and I'll give my closing remarks as well.
Option D is dark. Option D is very dark. And unfortunately, I think it's the one I believe. Because option D is she was never anti-Israel. And she was lying when she told Tucker that she was. But the motivation for the lie wasn't just to fit in with Tucker. The motivation was to push Charlie in that direction. That she wanted Charlie to be anti-Israel. And think of the consequences of that. If she was pushing Charlie that way behind the scenes, look how that worked out for him. Because who was it giving Charlie the hardest time? It was the pro-Israel donors. They were the ones calling Charlie saying, you got to not associate with Tucker. You got to not associate with Candace. You got to push back on these people. You can't have Dave Smith show up for what is billed as a debate at the Student Action Summit. And then Dave Smith takes a proverbial club to Josh Hammer's head and just beats him. Metaphorically. That's a dark option. The implications of that option, I think, are pretty obvious. I don't even have to state them. But it's a dark option. But it fits in with the speeches that I played tonight, doesn't it? Option D fits in nicely. Because option D means she was poised to take over. That she knew she would take over.
That is very dark. Say what you will. I think all these options are pretty, low down dirty. I think they don't put her in the best limelight. But I think to say that they're not rational, especially given to someone who has a speculative personality. Baron Coleman is a lawyer. That just comes with the nature of the job and the training, essentially. I've been in analytics, I've been in finance, I've been in operations, I've been in logistics. I've been in so many different kind of industries that you kind of evaluate all the kind of options and kind of weigh out what the ones that are most predictable. Based off of his research, he went with option D. Based off my lack of research, I don't really have much of an opinion on this. I think all of them don't put her in the best limelight, and I think it's very unfortunate the circumstance that she's in. Whether any of these are true or not, whether there's a fifth option we're not considering, I don't know. Maybe she's playing a role. Maybe she's playing a role behind the scenes until certain things come out so that she can, get down to the bottom of who killed her husband. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. I'm hoping that if she's doing all this is for the sake of what she truly believes. I don't know. You know what? I really don't know, guys, because to me, this is just all weird stuff. And it's unfortunate stuff. Because I'm the type of person, I'm just I don't know, people may call me passive or something. I'm just pro people, pro humanity, pro common sense, pro not violence. I'm not anti this or pro this. I'm not into extremisms at all. I was actually having this conversation with my sister the other day, and we were talking about feminists and people from the manosphere and all these just genuine extremes. And I'm listen, sissy, I'm just not into extremes. I'm not because I think I'm just a pretty fair and rational person, and understanding that there's certain things that are black and white. No controversy, just it is what it is, the facts are the facts. But I think that there's a lot of gray area, especially when it comes to people, because you have emotions, you have personalities, you have characteristics, you have so many things weighing in on the human experience that can make a lot of things great. Unfortunately, people don't say what they mean, people have ulterior motives, And it took me a long time to accept this specific fact. Not everyone's a good person. I know. To a regular person, to a regular decent person, whether you follow some kind of ideology or religion or you have some kind of faith or not, it's just like that's shocking. Because and I was shocked. I'm just like, why would anyone intentionally want to just be evil? But I had to realize that people don't have the same perspectives that we have. People honestly grew up in certain ways that influence their views, their decisions, and ultimately sometimes people are born with some wickedness inside them and there's nothing that you can do about it. Now, am I saying Erika is wicked? No. Am I saying Baron Coleman is wicked? No. Am I saying that Candace Owens is wicked? No. I'm not saying any of that, and I'm not taking sides because guess what? I don't know any of them. But I know that this situation, specifically with Charlie Kirk, with finding a spouse, allegedly, who have probably gotten with you for their own benefits and not for true love or true companionship or for the general alignment, like, hey, this person I feel something for and I feel like we can have a healthy, wholesome future with. There's so many people that fall victim to that specific situation. And I was going to play the closing remarks, but we've already been going for like an hour plus. So I don't want to keep you guys here all day. If you guys want to see Baron Coleman's closing remarks or just in general, definitely do go check it out. But what I'm trying to bring to you guys, right? What I'm trying to hone in here to like wrap up today's discussion, because we've been going on for a little bit. I think these stories ultimately point out the same lesson, right? Whether if it's Iran, the Iran deal, whether if it's with decision making when it comes to relationships, whether you're talking about the government, negotiating peace deals, political commentaries, debating accountability, or relationships between two people, everything comes down to judgment, character, and decision making. A peace deal can look great on paper, but only time reveals whether the people involved are committed to honoring it. Relationships often are the same. Sometimes people tell us exactly who they are, and sometimes it takes time, pressure, and circumstances to reveal it. That's why self-mastery matters. It's important to know your values before life tests them. It's important to know what you're willing to compromise on and what you're not. It's important to seek wisdom, to seek truth, and most importantly, to seek God's guidance before making decisions that can impact the rest of your life. Because sometimes the most expensive mistakes aren't just financial, let's say. They're emotional, relational, and spiritual, and can ultimately be physical. So what I'm trying to say with you guys, be very intentional about the decisions that you make when it comes to this change that can possibly happen if this peace agreement holds up. Invest your money into something that's going to be beneficial for you long term, whether if it's an emergency fund, whether if it's a skill, or whether if it's something that can help you get through tough times. And be very intentional about the people that you decide to get into relationships with. Do they align with your values? No one's going to be perfect, but it's critically important that you try to do your best to know the person you're actually going to get involved with, because it could cost you much more than you would bargain for later. Then you're willing to bargain for later. So as we move into this week, continue investing in yourself, continue building discernment, continue asking better questions, and continue becoming the kind of person who makes wise decisions when the pressure is on. Because let's just be honest, sometimes, especially when it comes to relationships, we get so excited with the fact that we met someone that we feel something for, that we provide passes or we forget on how to make proper decisions, on what questions to ask. And essentially, it can cost us a lot more than we think. Getting into a marriage is no laughing matter. And I'm not saying that what they're saying here is substantial proof that Erika had some kind of involvement or that something went on or that Charlie made a bad decision when it came to his specific spouse. I'm giving this specific story light so you guys can reflect on it and understand that it can cost you your very life. Not just, most people are not going to be plotted on, but sometimes some people take their own lives because a relationship doesn't work out or because they were bamboozled to think that the person that they love isn't the person who that is at all. So it's important. if you are suicidal, do remember to look at suicidal prevention. There are calls, talk to someone, but also when making decisions, bring God into this decision. Because sometimes we don't bring God into our decisions, or we think because we're following God, God's honoring us by certain things that we're seeing. Oh, this person's speaking the right way. This person's moving the right way. This person's doing this. The devil works too. The devil will give you a counterfeit of who you think you're supposed to be with, and then you end up being with that person, and you never consulted God if it was that person. The devil does work overtime too, and I think it's important that we bring in God to our decision making, especially when it comes to something that can affect us long term. I'm not saying that Charlie didn't, but let's just be honest, he was very, let's just say, motivated to find a wife and children, to want a family. And if the narratives out there were to believe, it seems like he was trying and failing and more times than he would have liked. And then he met Erika, and she was everything that he wanted to be. And now whether the personality of who she was and who Charlie thought she was is who she is, or whether if it's not, the lesson here is that there's a possibility that person cannot be it and can cost you your very life and everything that you built. Whether you're a man or a woman, it's important that you take your time to not let your desperation or your motivation to have something cost you everything in the end. So, as always, I would love to know your thoughts below. Do you think that this peace agreement will hold up? What are your thoughts on all the controversy? Or what are some of the lessons that you guys took from the actual controversy surrounding or the possible claims surrounding Erika Kirk? I'm curious to know. And again, this is all allegedly. I'm not here to take sides on something that I'm personally not involved with. I am interested, wholeheartedly interested to know, because I'm an advocate for justice, right? To know who killed Charlie Kirk, how, and why. Because I'm an advocate for justice, because I'm an American, and because I know there's people who are in certain, I know people who have certain goals, who are in certain limelight. And if something were to happen to them just because they're trying to better humanity, I'd be devastated, and I'd be just as hyper-focused in trying to figure out who harmed them if some harm were to come to them. And knowing this would give us more insight and more transparency as to what's really going on behind the scenes and what the real narrative is when it comes to our well-being and when it comes to what our future would actually look like. So that's why I'm genuinely interested. I'm not here to pick sides. I'm just an observer, observing all the information, seeing what comes about, reporting on certain things that I think are relevant to the average person, and bringing the lessons back to you so you can make sure that you do not make certain mistakes. So you can take the lessons and apply it to your life as relevant as possible. And if it's not relevant to you, just ignore it. If you don't agree with me, you can say your opinion. I will respectfully disagree, but we don't need to attack one another and be violent just because we're not on the same page. Again, I'm not taking sides here. I'm listening in, and I'm bringing back what's important and what's relevant to you. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's conversation. That's all I have for today. As you guys know that we drop content every Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I'll see you guys in my next video. Do remember to subscribe to the channel. I really enjoyed this one, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So bye.